morning, everyone. Welcome to the 6th session of Food Meets Faith. And today we're going to start on page 17, so if you get a chance to move to that. You didn't want your purse there, Glenn?
Clashes with my shirt.
Perfect. Good answer. Good answer. Okay, let's open with a word of prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you so much for this beautiful day. Thank you for the snow we have. And thank you so much for this program and what we've been able to learn throughout the week and throughout the past weeks. We thank you for learning that you're our number one source for everything, even with food, and we ask that you open up our hearts and our minds to what you have to say about the program today, and we bless each and every person that's here. It's in your son's precious name that we pray. Amen. Amen. So we're on to day 5. I will be honest, I thought, oh, what are we going to get out of this? But each time I read it again, you know, because it's been months since I've read this part of it, I get more and more. So it's funny how God reveals things to us as we're capable of hearing them. So first one, do not make idols or set up an image or a sacred stone for yourselves, and do not place a carved stone in your land. Bow down before it. I am the Lord your God. And that's from Leviticus. So each time we have a couple Bible verses that help to tie everything in together. And Isabel starts out, many of us pray before meals and thank God for providing the food that we're about to eat. But do you ever really consider what a true blessing that is? I mean, number one, we have food to eat, and that's super important to our church. We do the monthly food drive, and you know, so that is very important. And I know that I take a lot of that for granted. But unfortunately, the abundance has led us not to more gratitude, but rather we've had very unhealthy relationships with our food, and I'd be the first one to admit that's been me. I made food an idol at many times in my life. Usually my old saying used to be, when I'm eating breakfast, I'm thinking about what I'm eating for lunch, and when I'm eating lunch, I'm thinking about what's for dinner. And you know, think about that. I'm not living in the presence. I'm not enjoying what I have. I'm thinking about the next thing. That definitely wasn't going to satisfy me. And that's what the satisfaction that I've gotten from this program has really, made me pay attention. Obviously, we know that food is nourishment, but many of the foods we choose are not really nourishing. So it's what God provides for us, so our bodies work well and stay healthy. Plants, animals, seeds, fruits, all of these things were made by God when He created the earth. And He meant for these foods to be used effectively and enjoyed. And, you know, we have talked about this in past sessions about how there wasn't the obesity epidemic way back when. And it's because they were using mostly God's provisions and not the provisions of McDonald's and, you know, all of the fast food that we have. What He never meant was for those foods to be used or idolized. And, you know, as with anything, we get stuck in different programs and different thoughts, and we have to be careful about idols. And that was why another reason I loved this program is that God is our idol. It's God. And it's not the food, it's not Isabel, it's God. And we can't fail when that is the main source. Food was never meant for when we're in pain or when we're sad, when we feel lonely. those are the exact times we should be running to the Lord in prayer and seeking Him as our comfort, and not finding comfort in overloading our bodies with food. And then, you know, I've said this before too. Isabel's talking about, you know, different people saying, well, I could never give up sugar. It's just how I get through the day, or the caffeine. I was the Diet Coke girl. I said, that gets me through the day. You know, that got me through PA school. I've said that a million times, and, you know, that's not what got me through. So, I could never give up coffee. And that's why Isabel went towards this program, because she was a coffeeaholic. She had coffee all day long, and she said, I have so much to do and so little time to do it in, and that's what she felt was getting her where she needed to be. And sometimes we put our desire for food as our comfort before seeking the Lord as our comfort and strength. So, and then she says, please understand that I'm in no way saying eating sugar or cake is a sin or bad, but what I am saying is that having that relationship with these foods in a way that gives it the ultimate power over you is the problem at hand. So it's when the food becomes to have power over us. And I've talked to many of you, and you've had the same feelings as me, is that was definitely happening. So, and she talks about all her drinking of her coffee. And she was putting her faith in herself and her coffee to get everything done, and never even considered letting God be her strength. And this is a good Christian woman. And so, you know, just because we've accepted the Lord doesn't mean that we don't have room to grow. And it's when we're not growing that, you know, we start to slide backwards. And so this to me has just been a growth, and it is a praise. And I know that, I believe it was Kelly and I talked about this, a very good book about coming to God first. I don't remember the name of the author, but it's a guy, and he works at a church, and it's talking about giving the devil a seat at the table. Has anyone ever read that book? It's very, very interesting. And I get in this at work all the time as people bring things to me, because I've been there for so long, and then you're just thinking negative all the day. Did you hear what this person did? And this guy had was doing that through where he worked, and one of his mentors, his brothers in Christ, said, don't give the devil a seat at your table. And he was like, what did that mean? And so they started doing stuff, and then he did this book, and it's pretty interesting. Is, you know, you need God at your table and focusing with Him, and keep the others away from your table. They can be running all around, and if you're focusing on God, you don't notice it. But as soon as you slide that chair out and start talking about somebody, or, you know, putting a negative connotation on whatever, He's right at your table. And then what happens? You know, we get waylaid with what His thoughts are, and we think those are good, and then, you know, it pushes God away from our seat at the table. So I listened to that on a book on tape, just driving back and forth to work, and I thought that was very good.
Is the name of the book Don't Give the Enemy a Seat at Your Table?
Yes.
By Louis Giglio?
Giglio, that's who it is. Yep. So that's a good one. All right, so the harsh truth for Isabel was that coffee was her idol, and she put all her faith in it. The only thing that helped her to overcome this addiction and be completely caffeine-free for several years, which she is now, was realizing that this was an idol, and I was putting it before God. I did not have coffee in its rightful place. And, you know, coffee is such a simple thing. Food is such a simple thing, but we can make it, you know, exactly opposite of what we need it to be. So the question is, do you have food in its rightful place right now? Are you using it solely for nourishment, or is it for your source of comfort and strength, and even an idol in its own way? So it's very easy to succumb to that, and that's what, you know, Kelly's advice was, make a plan, because as soon as something goes wrong, that's when we jump to our old ways, like, oh, I just got to do this right now, and or I've messed up, you know, just get right back on. This program allows you to do those things, and I even say, don't even count it as a mess up, count it as that's, you know, that's what's going to keep you on this journey for a long time. So and just making the best choice. So realizing this simple truth can be the difference for you when it comes to finally gaining control of your eating and your relationship with food. Remember, you have nothing to feel guilty or ashamed of. You are not alone here. I know it may be difficult to look at some of these truths, but I assure you it can be the difference between being successful in this journey of weight loss or not being successful. So today we want you to try to take some time in prayer to ask the Lord to be your source of comfort and your strength, and get rid of the addictions / idols that you have. So, and as she said, prayer is a significant part of this journey. I don't know that there's anything successful to accomplish in life without prayer being part of it. So if you're on the struggle bus, that might be where you're you know, pulling apart from what this program is. So, okay. If you have your Bibles, Exodus 23. And it's part of our commandments. And this must have been in our Bible study. Sarah, you can probably help me with this. On 20 verse 3 says, you shall have no other gods before me. And that kind of stopped me up a little bit, the before part. Because I don't think we want idols after him either. I had in parentheses, and I don't know if this is something we discussed or if I just added that in, but I said beside me. You know, because I just feel like we only want him as our idol, even if he's first. Having others afterwards is not good either. Did we discuss that? Do you remember, Sarah?
I don't think specifically we discussed that word before.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Does everyone say before me?
Ours does, but it has a footnote, and when you go down to the footnote, it says or besides.
Okay, so maybe somebody had said their footnote on that too. So, but it's in our 10 commandments, and you know, at the very top, and we tend to not, you know, always remember that. So, have you guys found times in your life where you place food as an idol before the Lord? Anyone else other than me?
Oh, yes.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, that was just like Oprah talks about the light bulb moment. That was the light bulb moment for me. It was like, oh my goodness. And God's sitting there waiting patiently for us to get it, you know. The farther you get in your walk, the dumber you know you are.
That's so true.
Isn't it? Just because, you know, I thought I had that world by the tail, you know, do great things and great things will happen, and it is just not that way. And God's patient, you know, he's patient, but that's not
I'm sorry a lot,
yes, right.
you know, to him.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't
For
even
being
see that.
so
I didn't get
naive
that.
or,
Right.
you know, blinders of what we think is right.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And then in times of stress, what do people typically do when in times of stress?
Eat.
Yep. And so number one, having those things around, and it is difficult for people who have grandkids and, you know, kids that are coming, even my adult children get, you know, their noses cut off a little bit if there isn't enough stuff. But I found myself just compartmentalizing that stuff, and I don't even think about it, you know. I have some stuff still, I did clean out a lot of stuff that I knew didn't matter to them. And then, you know, such as the boxed foods that have the added sugar, the stuff that we don't think of as sugar, I've gotten rid of that. But I do have some other stuff that they like around just because, you know, I think that's important. And even just having like even those little, the Toll House cookies, having those, and you can make a couple cookies for them. And then I have my cookie recipe that I have, and I freeze those too. Because if you make the whole batch, it says 12 cookies, you know, I'm not even giving myself a chance. I feel like I'm far enough away from that, but why would I? You know, it's, so I like to do it. If I feel like I want it, then I just go in the freezer and put them on defrost for just a little bit, throw them in the oven, and they taste just the same to me. I mean, I don't think you want them to sit there for 6 months, but so those are all just ways of trying to, you know, make it work. Just take some of those areas where we struggle right away from yourselves, and it makes it much easier. But many of us tend to kind of do that. And have you experienced changes in how you see food since starting the program? Have any of the relationships changed?
Just this morning on the way here, I was thinking that I was not looking forward to my lunch today because I was thinking about our lesson today and everything, and I thought, well, what is that lunch for? Is it for my enjoyment or is it for my nutrition? And I thought, well, it's for my nutrition, number one, and then the rest, you know, I can
Yeah.
be enjoyment, and
Right.
it's not that I disliked it.
Yeah.
It's just that it wasn't like fabulous.
What you
Yeah.
gotta have. Yeah, and there are those things. I mean, we all have our favorites and not our favorites, definitely. But yes, it's right. And then I just feel like you do it, and especially because that's a quick lunch, because you've already prepared it from the night before.
Right.
And then you can move on to the other things that you have to do throughout your day, and you're not focusing on, oh, I better go get a cookie. Oh gosh, I gotta, you know, let me do this, and then I'm gonna, you know, go grab something sweet to reward myself. And just being in that rabbit hole is so frustrating. So, Glenn?
So for me, I see food so much different now because of the education that she's given us on all the different sections, the fats and the sugars and the drinks and the alcohol. I wasn't educated on that, so I didn't know what I didn't know. But now that I know it, and I actually see food much differently, like that's harmful. Why would I want to put something harmful into my body? Now, it doesn't mean I don't still have cravings, like I see a
Right.
chocolate chip cookie and I want to
Yeah.
devour it,
Yeah.
but I know now what that has in it that is harmful to my body, and it makes me see it in a whole different light.
Right. Perfect.
And I can identify with what Sarah said today. I think, now looking back, I did always look forward to a meal, whether it was out or whether it was something I was preparing. And now I see how much I thought about it, okay? I didn't know that I was mired up in it at the time. So now, then when you start shifting, I remember having those thoughts about, I'm really not looking forward to this dinner. I'm really not looking forward to this lunch. Well, it's a shift, for me it was a shift in eat to live, don't live to eat.
That's a good one.
And so when I start, and so I don't do that as much anymore. I don't have, I don't really want that. I'm just like, I gotta throw something down because I got this and this and this to do. You know, I gotta get this done because I got this and this to do. I know I'm supposed to eat something, I gotta keep my metabolism going. It's a mechanism for health now, instead of an obsession for eating food.
And you just find yourself so much more efficient throughout the day. I know I have. Yes, you do spend a little more time than you would running through the drive-through in preparing things, but you know, I watch the Facebook. There's a lot of people that are way more organized than me, but they probably don't have the husband they have that's cooking their meals and you know having them ready when they get home. But they're preparing. They've got them all in their refrigerator and everything. But you know, that's a great way to do it, and you can do it that way. Prep them ahead of time. But again, people have always asked me, you know, is it okay if I add this because I don't like this? This is a guide, okay? And you do not have to stick to it. If the spices you don't like, if some of them, you know, and there's even places in there, I just can't reference exactly where it is, but she said that, I think it's earlier in the book, you know, where just make the change. If you don't like this spice, add something in different. And then also, if you don't, you know, like cucumbers don't work for me. They don't like my body. And so, you know, if it's cucumbers, I will omit those or add something else in. And that is totally fine. Are you going wrong by adding, you know, a super veggie in there? Absolutely not. And Eileen had asked about, you know, celery, if celery was able to add. Absolutely. Celery, broccoli, and carrots take more energy for you to chew and digest than they count in calories. So that's seen as a positive food. So if you're ever, you know, really wanting to need to substitute something, then substitute that. Especially if, like, some of you guys, if the portion sizes, we always do fine with the portion sizes because he eats a little more and I try to eat a little less. And so, but if you feel like you need more, those would be things to add in there to give you more substance, and you're gonna be ahead of the ball game by doing that. So.
Sarah, I wanted to mention that on page 62 of the Food News Faith, there is a section about greens powder. People who can't choke down kale and spinach and all that.
We're talking about that today.
Oh, nice.
Yes, we're talking about organic foods and adding in, and that is definitely one of the things that I was going to talk about.
I'll give my commentary later then.
No, no problem. You're paying attention.
Yes.
So, okay. So let's review the chapters we read in preparation for this session. We'll go over a few of the most important concepts from each chapter. So we're going to go to our page 59, organic food. So this is another potential controversial concept when we live in farm country, and half my family is farmers. But again, as with anything, as with the alcohol, as with the soy, you know, take it with a grain of salt. This job is to, you know, explain things to you. I've learned a ton of things, and there are ways to, you know, kind of meet in the middle to say. So, you know, as Isabel says, you have to be careful about how you say things, because organic can, you know, just be a controversial word. The definition of organic food is it's food that is grown and raised without the use of synthetic or chemically formulated pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, fertilizers, okay? So obviously we know that a lot of this stuff is used when we're mass producing products in order to make sure they don't spoil. As we know, our vegetables don't always last very long, And so you can imagine from a farmer's perspective how that works. And so, but we also probably would all agree that it is harmful in many ways. And so, she has a good example of an apple. So let's look at an apple. The following chemicals have been found in a conventionally grown apple, a food that most of us would consider that is a healthy source. And I can't even pronounce many of these, chlorophyros, captain, vinclozolin, but these are all things that can interrupt. If we go back to our talk about the thyroid, many of the chemicals that are put on there block the thyroid. And remember, the thyroids are brains of the body. So if our thyroid's not working well, then nothing's going to work well, especially our weight. And so those are things that we should all need to consider. The reality for farmers is that there are a lot of bugs on farms, and these critters have quite the liking to fruit and vegetable crops, definitely. Farmers can't afford to lose their crops due to pesky little insects, so they put the pesticides on them, which repels the insects, and they can also prevent, you know, like fungus from forming, that sort of thing. So growing organic shows that they're still grown. They do use some pesticides on them, but they're more from natural sources, such as certain types of plants, and that they don't use the synthetic pesticides. So organic farmers also tend to spray less pesticides on their product than other farmers, and the pesticides are less dangerous for the environment. If a product is certified organic, it has to follow the certain standards to be organic. So I'm sure we know of organic farmers that are around, and you know, it's a lot more work. Your crops are a lot smaller for a smaller dividend. But what this kind of tells me is that I feel like having your own garden is like a little piece of heaven. And you don't have to put things on it. And yes, it does take some time, but we had a garden when the kids were small and it wasn't working full time. And then, you know, that went by the wayside. But then when the pandemic started, we started doing that just for something to do. And we enjoyed it so much. And just the stuff, I mean, just the canned tomatoes that I have, you know, you can tell a difference between your winter fruits and vegetables and your summer ones. And so to me, that's what I took out of this organic food is, you know, do your own. It does make a difference. Or, you know, talk to one of your friends that does it and throw them a few bucks or say, hey, can I hoe your garden and take some vegetables for a week? I mean, there's many different things that you can do. Most of us who have gardens have an overabundance, just because it's easy to grow a few more plants. So that's something to kind of keep in your mind about the organic. Obviously, organic foods can be more expensive. So with the economy as it is, we have to keep that in mind. But Isabel also has on here just different ways of working with specific washes. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. But pesticides can cause cancers, and they all go right to our gut. And you know, colon cancer is so prevalent, and so cancer can happen. Alzheimer's, they're finding studies with kids and ADHD from all the pesticides, birth defects, and so on to page 60. They can also harm the nervous system, the reproductive system, and the endocrine system, which is our thyroid's working, and diabetes. So ADHD, like I told you, you can read, specifically about that if you didn't get a chance to read before. But I think that page 61 is super important for us because I had even forgotten some of the things that I read before, and I believe I gave this as a handout at the beginning, and if not, I can make some more copies for people. But it talks about the clean 15 and the dirty dozen. And so there are foods that she's saying you don't need organic, okay? So I know sometimes the organic avocados are tiny and they just don't have that. I'm not a small avocado. I feel like they have so much more flavor in the bigger ones. Well, you don't have that because the skin or whatever they call it is so firm that it doesn't get leached to the inside of the avocado that we eat. So all of these are the clean 15, so you can go ahead and read about these. Alternatively, the dirty dozen plus contains produce with the highest pesticide load, making them the most important to buy organic or grow on your own, and apples are a little bit interesting to me, but I think it's just because they get those little black spots like the wormy type things, and I think that's why they do it, because the skin is pretty, tough. But that's where we get a lot of our source of nutrition is from the skin. So, you want to try to eat the skin if you can. Strawberries makes wonderful sense to me because they're so porous. And so that is one that we would like to do organically because it's very difficult and you can't wash a strawberry very hard or you're gonna have jam, soapy jam. So spinach, that is pretty easy to buy organic, and they always have it pre-washed and that sort of thing because once you wash the spinach you gotta eat it right away or it's gonna go bad on you. So all of these others, has anyone else thought, oh geez, I didn't know. I mean, potatoes were one for me, but that makes sense. Makes sense because they're sitting in the ground on where we're adding all the chemicals. And then my good old blueberries, which is my superfood. If I'm going to be on a desert island and they tell us we can only have one food, I'm taking blueberries, okay? And that is one that they say are highly toxic. So that's a big thing. And then hot peppers, and I don't understand completely about the hot peppers either because they have a thicker skin, but I've read enough to feel like I can trust in what Isabel says. I don't think she jumps right into anything. She has been a nutritionist for over 20 years, and so but if you find it difficult to source organic produce, it's a good idea to wash your produce with a homemade vegetable and fruit wash. And so this is how she recommends to put this, and I know she has on here doTERRA lemon, and I have come across that before through the essential oils where they all have their own little version of that. But again, if like Glenn said, now that we really know it, I mean, we knew that, most of us knew that, but you can go wrong with fruits and vegetables. So, but just taking that little extra, this stays, you just, put it underneath your sink and shake it, and then, wash your veggies. We wash our veggies anyway. She says she likes them to sit for about 5 minutes and then rinse them off. So, but I think that's important. Then we move on to supplements real quick. And I learned quite a few things about this as well. Contrary to popular marketing these days, you don't need supplements to be successful on a well-designed health program. Good, healthy food can deliver the optimum nutrition you need for weight loss and good health. when I do annuals on people, they fill out this paperwork, and it kind of talks about the things they eat. And one of the questions is, how many fried foods do you eat in a day, and how many fruit or vegetable servings do you get in a day? And I'm running specials on average fruit or vegetables, 1 in a day. How sad is that? You know, so if you eat healthy, you don't need to have a lot of supplements. But if you don't, like if vegetables are like the worst thing for you, and if that's the case, I would like you to put, do your organic cheese, do some sort of a dip with Greek yogurt, something like that, because if you don't ever eat those things, you'll never develop a taste for it, okay? Just like once you get away from pop, once you drink a pop, it's like, oh, why did I like that? It tastes like metal, or it tastes like pure sugar, So if you have to, I had a pediatric physician that I did a rotation under, and she was super. And I think I've even discussed this before. She's like, for kids, get them however you can get them to eat vegetables. Put butter on it, spice it up, put cheese on it, dips, whatever, to get that hankering. And there are a lot of people that have no hankering for any vegetables whatsoever. So that's important. And if you're not, then these are the things that we recommend, okay? We talked a while back about our fats on the omega-3s versus the omega-6. And many of us have high cholesterol. And so we want to make sure that we're getting, some sort of source of that, because omega-3s are not as plentiful in the things we eat. Let me go back to the fats page real quick. Omega-3s, salmon, sardines, fish oil, cod liver, chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts, albacore tuna, egg yolks, Brussels sprouts, kale, and spinach. So if you're finding yourself avoiding many of those, then you may want to consider the omega-3 supplement. And there are some good ones in there. Then we move on to the greens powder. Fruits and vegetables, those are super important. So if you're not good about doing that, you can supplement with this. But I'm on the Casey school of thought. I like to eat my nutrients rather than drink them. And before I forget, one of the things I do on my smoothie days is I really enjoy the muffins. And the muffin sizes it's 2 muffins for a breakfast. And what I'll do is I'll eat a smoothie in the morning, and for my snack, I will do 1 of the muffins. And that kind of keeps me going. Or, do something that you like with your, you got to get a good protein in there. So either or a hard-boiled egg or something, because a smoothie doesn't last me forever. The other thing that you can do is put a little bit of oatmeal in it, but you have to use your blender, because then it'll chop that up.
Okay.
So.
Sarah, you're saying if I'm eating what Isabel has planned for the week, and eating the kale and the spinach, I don't need to take
Don't waste your time. No,
Okay.
I wouldn't.
Well, that's good.
So, yep, I wouldn't. But if you're, finding yourself skipping a lot of our superfoods, then that would be a way to do it.
Did you just say you can take the raw oatmeal oats that
Mm-hmm.
she has put
Yep.
right in your blender?
Yes.
For some,
Mhm.
oh,
Yeah, yep. And that gets me, now I used to, because of my acidic system, I used to not be able to have just a smoothie without something with it, or my stomach would be irritated. Now I can, no problem. But even just like the fruit smoothie place, Tropical Smoothie, they have a couple that are good ones that are good to have. Now, they come huge. I wish you could get a smaller version because you wouldn't want to drink the whole thing in one serving. But I'll do that as one of my sweet treats. There is the triple berry oat that has oats in it.
That's my
And
favorite one.
yes, that one's good. But I just stumbled upon another one, and it's got bananas in it, so that's a later on down the road. Figs, that's your sugar. And it has a lot of like a cinnamon flavor to it, and I think that has oats in it too, and I love that. So that I'll do if I'm really looking for something sweet. That is a sweet thing for me, and I can look that up once I get my phone and tell you exactly which one that one is. With the triple berry oat, you want to look and make sure that